5 minutes after boarding her own airline's plush first-class cabin, Nia Carter, the fierce CEO of Horizon Wings, grabs the intercom with a voice shaking from fury, firing the entire crew mid-flight as passengers freeze in disbelief. What began as a quiet audit of her Dallas to Seattle route erupts into a raw public showdown no one expected, least of all the smug attendants who'd sneered at her. This single explosive act will shatter her world and redefine her legacy. What pushed her to snap? Hey folks, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice kicking prejudice to the curb, smash that like button and subscribe for more epic tales like this one. Nia Carter stood at the bustling gate in Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, her slim frame swallowed by a faded gray hoodie and worn jeans, a far cry from the tailored suits she wore as CEO of Horizon Wings. At 40, she'd clawed her way from a ticket agent scraping by on minimum wage to the helm of a company she'd rescued from the brink of collapse, turning a floundering regional outfit into a powerhouse that now ranked among the top airlines in the nation. Her sharp brown eyes scanned the crowd, her ticket to first class clutched in a hand that trembled not from nerves but from purpose. Today, she wasn't the polished executive whose face graced Forbes covers, or the daughter of Haitian immigrants who defied every odd stacked against her. She was just another passenger, her dark skin and coiled hair blending into the sea of travelers. Her identity a secret even from the 10,000 employees she'd molded into a workforce that prided itself on excellence. This was a blind audit, her way of keeping Horizon Wings honest, of rooting out the rot she'd sworn to eliminate when she took the reins 6 years ago. She'd built this airline on a promise of fairness, of service that didn't bend to bias, but today she'd test that promise with her own flesh and blood on the line. The gate loomed ahead, a sleek counter framed by Horizon's navy and gold logo, the words, Dallas to Seattle glowing on a screen above. Passengers shuffled forward, some in crisp business attire, others hauling overstuffed carry-ons, all chattering about meetings or vacations or the Seahawks game they'd catch if the flight landed on time. Nia stepped into the line, her sneakers scuffing the polished floor, her pulse steady despite the weight of what she was about to do. She'd done this before, slipped through her own system unnoticed. But something about today felt heavier, like the air itself carried a warning she couldn't yet name. The line moved fast, a well-oiled machine until it was her turn. She slid her boarding pass across the counter to the gate agent, a wiry kid in his 20s with a mop of thinning brown hair plastered to his forehead and a smirk that curled his lips like he'd just heard a private joke. His name tag read, Kyle, pinned crookedly to a uniform that looked 2 sizes too big. He snatched the ticket, his pale fingers flicking it up to the scanner, and the beep confirmed it was legit. But instead of handing it back with the standard, enjoy your flight, he froze, his hazel eyes narrowing as they darted from the paper to her face. First class? He said, his voice a mix of disbelief and something sharper, something that pricked at Nia's skin like a needle. She nodded, keeping her expression blank, her lips pressed into a thin line. You sure you're in the right line, lady? He added, louder now, his smirk blooming into a full-on grin that showed too many teeth. Heads turned, a white woman in a blazer clutching a latte glancing over with mild curiosity. A guy in a cowboy hat behind Nia shifting his weight like he was annoyed at the delay. Nia felt the heat crawl up her neck, the old familiar burn of being sized up, of being told she didn't fit the picture someone else had painted in their head. She'd faced it 1,000 times, from the professors who'd assumed she'd flunked out of her MBA program to the board members who'd balked when she'd been named CEO, whispering she was a token pick despite her numbers proving them wrong every quarter since. Yes, she said, her voice cool and clipped. I'm sure. Kyle's grin didn't budge. He tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle he didn't care to solve, then flicked his gaze back to the ticket. Huh, he grunted, dragging the word out as he scanned it again, slower this time like he was hunting for a flaw. The machine beeped once more, green light flashing, but he didn't move to hand it back. Instead, he leaned forward, elbows on the counter, his breath smelling faintly of spearmint gum as he locked eyes with her. This says first class, but can I see some ID? His tone was casual, but the edge in it cut deep, a blade wrapped in velvet. Nia's jaw tightened, her fingers curling into fists inside her hoodie pockets. She'd watched the last 5 passengers breeze through, all white, all clutching first-class tickets, and not one had been asked for anything beyond their boarding pass. The woman with the latte had flashed a smile and gotten a "welcome aboard" without a second glance. The cowboy hat guy had grumbled about the coffee cart being closed, and Kyle had chuckled like they were old pals. But here she was, standing under a spotlight she hadn't asked for, her right to be there questioned because her skin didn't match some unspoken checklist Kyle carried in his head. She pulled her driver's license from her wallet, sliding it across the counter with a deliberate calm that belied the storm brewing in her chest. Kyle snatched it up, holding it next to the ticket, his brows shooting up as he read her name. "Nia Carter," he said, almost to himself, then flicked his eyes back to her, searching her face like he was waiting for her to crack and admit it was a fake. He didn't know he was staring at the woman who'd signed his last paycheck, the one who'd approved the budget for the very gate he stood behind. To him, she was just another black woman who'd somehow stumbled into a space he didn't think she belonged in. "Like the CEO," he snorted, a laugh bubbling up as he handed the ID back, his fingers brushing hers just long enough to feel like a challenge. "Funny coincidence, huh?" Nia took the license, tucking it away as she met his gaze, her own eyes hard and unyielding. "Yeah," she said, her voice low. "Funny." She grabbed her ticket and turned toward the jet bridge, her steps measured, her mind already racing with notes she'd jot down the second she sat down. Kyle's smirk lingered in her peripheral vision, a taeau she could still hear it, sharp and mocking as she moved away, the sound echoing in her ears like a taunt. This wasn't the first time she'd been singled out, but it hit different coming from her own airline, the company she'd poured her soul into transforming over the past 6 years. She'd taken Horizon from a sinking ship, drowning in debt, and customer complaints, to a fleet of 100 planes soaring across the country, posting record profits and glowing reviews. At 40, she'd become a symbol of what hard work and brilliance could achieve, a black woman leading an industry ruled by pale faces and old money. Her parents had come from Haiti with nothing but a suitcase and a dream, and she'd built an empire from their grit and her own relentless drive. She'd earned an MBA while working night shifts as a flight attendant, her hands raw from cleaning tray tables, her mind sharp from textbooks she'd read by flashlight. Now, she was the youngest CEO in Horizon's history, a name whispered, with respect in boardrooms and feared by competitors. But to Kyle, she was just a question mark, a body that didn't fit his narrow little world. As she walked down the jet bridge, the rubbery smell of jet fuel mixing with the hum of distant engines, she pulled a small notebook from her pocket, flipping it open to a fresh page. Her pen scratched fast, ink bleeding into the paper as she wrote, "Gate Agent Kyle, Dallas, 8:47 a.m. Demanded ID for first-class ticket, not required of prior passengers." Smirked, questioned legitimacy. She underlined legitimacy twice, the word burning in her gut. This wasn't just a petty slight. It was a crack in the foundation she'd built, a reminder that no matter how high she climbed, some people would always see her as an outsider. She'd faced subtle bias before, the sidelong glances on red-eye flights, the surprise in voices when she introduced herself as the boss. But this was her airline, her rules, her people, and it stung like salt in a fresh wound. She tucked the notebook away, her resolve hardening as she stepped onto the plane, the cabin air cool against her flushed skin. Kyle thought he'd gotten away with a cheap jab, a little power trip to flex his gate agent ego. He had no idea he'd just lit the fuse on a bomb that would blow his world apart. Nia settled into her seat, the plush leather creaking under her. "Wait," and let her eyes drift shut for a moment, replaying his smirk, his words, the way he'd leaned in like he owned the place. She'd spent years proving she belonged, and now she'd make damn sure her own house was in order. This audit wasn't just a checkup anymore, it was personal. Nia Carter stood at the edge of the jet bridge, her sneakers rooted to the rubber-matted floor as the line of passengers dwindled ahead of her, their voices a low buzz against the hum of the plane's engines warming up outside. Her boarding pass, still warm from Kyle's sweaty grip, felt like a live wire in her hand, the ink smudged where his thumb had pressed too hard. She'd handed over her ID moments ago, watching his hazel eyes squint at the name, Nia Carter. "Like it." was some kind of riddle he couldn't crack. Now he held the license up to the dim light of the gate's overhead bulb, tilting it back and forth as if he could peel back a forgery with his stare alone. "Nia Carter?" he said again, his voice a slow drawl, thick with skepticism that rolled off his tongue like molasses laced with venom. "Like the CEO?" He snorted, a sharp bark of a laugh that bounced off the counter and landed square in Nia's chest, heavy as a fist. Around them, the gate area pulsed with life, a white woman in a navy blazer sipping her latte with a bored glance, a beefy guy in a Stetson hat tapping his foot behind Nia, his impatience a low growl in his throat. Kyle didn't care who heard. He wanted them to hear, wanted them to join in the little game he'd started. "Yeah, right," he muttered, loud enough for the woman to smirk into her cup, her eyes flicking to Nia's hoodie like it was proof of something unspoken. Nia's pulse kicked up, a steady thrum against her ribs, but she kept her face a mask, her lips locked in a neutral line. She'd played this part before, the calm black woman swallowing the insult, letting it sit like a stone in her gut while the world spun on. "It's me," she said, her tone flat, giving him nothing to grab onto. Kyle's smirk widened, his teeth flashing as he leaned back, crossing his arms over his narrow chest. "Sure it is," he said, his voice dripping with mockery, "and I'm the president of Texas." The cowboy hat guy chuckled, a low rumble. And Nia felt the heat climb her neck again, hotter this time, sharper, like a blade scraping her skin. She'd built Horizon Wings from a pile of debt and broken planes into a fleet that soared across 40 states, a company that had doubled its revenue under her watch, and yet here she was, reduced to a punchline by a gate agent who probably couldn't spell CEO without a cheat sheet. Kyle handed her ID back, his fingers lingering just long enough to make it a taunt. But before she could take a step toward the jet bridge, he raised a hand, signaling her to stop. "Hold up," he said, his grin fading into something colder, something that glinted in his eyes like a predator catching scent. "We got a problem here." He tapped the boarding pass against the counter, the sound a staccato beat that matched the tightening in Nia's chest. "This ticket's first class, but I'm thinking there's a glitch or something." He turned, waving over a supervisor, his voice rising with a fake urgency that turned heads. "Linda, need you over here." Nia's gaze shifted as a woman strode up, her heels clicking sharp and fast against the tile. Linda was in her 50s, her ash blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, her face a map of lines etched by years of frowning at passengers who dared to inconvenience her. Her name tag gleamed under the fluorescent lights, supervisor stamped below Linda in bold letters, and her pale blue eyes locked onto Nia with a scrutiny that felt like a physical shove. "What's the issue?" she snapped, her tone clipped, her hands already on her hips like she was ready to fight. Kyle handed her the boarding pass, leaning in close as he stage whispered, "Says first class, but look at her. Doesn't add up." Linda's eyes flicked to Nia, taking in the hoodie, the jeans, the dark skin framed by a halo of natural curls, and her lips thinned into a slash of disapproval. "You sure this is yours?" she asked, holding the ticket up like it was evidence in a crime scene, her voice loud enough to draw a murmur from the stragglers still milling around the gate. Nia's fingers twitched, itching to snatch it back, but she forced them still, her voice steady as steel. "Yes, it's mine. Scan it again if you don't believe me." Linda huffed, a sound that was half laugh, half scoff, and ran the ticket through the scanner herself. The beep came quick, green light flashing, but her frown deepened like the machine had betrayed her. "Well," she said, dragging the word out, "it checks out, but this doesn't make sense. First class is full of our regulars, and you're not one of them." She paused, her gaze raking over Nia again, lingering on her sneakers like they were a smoking gun. "I'm thinking we need to bump you to economy. There's gotta be a mix-up." Nia's breath caught, a sharp inhale that burned her lungs. Bump her? From her own airline's first-class cabin, the one she'd designed down to the leather seats and the complimentary champagne. She'd spent years proving she belonged at the top, clawing past every doubter who'd sneered at her ambition. And now this woman, this supervisor in her own company, was trying to shove her back down like she was some stowaway sneaking into a world she didn't deserve. "There's no mix-up," Nia said, her voice rising just enough to cut through the hum of the gate. "And I'm not moving. That's my seat, and I'm boarding." Linda's eyes narrowed, a flicker of irritation sparking in them, but the scanner's beep was undeniable, a truth she couldn't argue with. She thrust the boarding pass back at Naya, her fingers tight around the edges like she wanted to tear it in half. "Fine," she snapped. "Go ahead, but don't think this is over." She turned to Kyle, her voice dropping low, but not low enough to miss. "Keep an eye on her. Something's off." Nia took the ticket, her grip steady despite the tremor in her chest, and started down the jet bridge, the cool metal walls closing in around her as the sound of Linda's heels faded behind. Her notebook was out before she'd gone 10 steps, her pen flying across the page as she scribbled, "Supervisor Linda, 8:50 a.m. Tried to reroute me to economy, claimed ticket glitch despite valid scan, told Kyle to watch me." She underlined "watch me" 3 times, the ink digging into the paper, a jagged line of fury. This wasn't just a stumble in her audit anymore. It was a slap, a bold, brazen challenge to everything she'd built. Linda didn't know she'd just crossed the woman who'd signed off on her last promotion, who'd fought tooth and nail to make Horizon a place where no one got judged by the color of their skin or the cut of their clothes. But she'd find out soon enough. Naya's steps quickened, the jet bridge vibrating under her feet as she neared the plane's open door, the faint whiff of jet fuel stinging her nose. She'd won this round, forced them to let her through, but Linda's parting shot hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Keep an eye on her. What did they think she was going to do? Steal the silverware? Start a riot over the in-flight peanuts? She almost laughed, a bitter sound that caught in her throat, but the weight of it all pressed down harder. This was her airline, her dream, and they were treating her like an intruder in her own house. She stepped onto the plane, the cabin air hitting her like a cold slap, and glanced back one last time. Kyle was still at the gate, his smirk gone, his eyes tracking her through the glass like a hunter sizing up prey. She turned away, her resolve hardening into something unbreakable. They thought they could push her around, test her, treat her like she didn't belong. They had no idea who they were messing with. "Hey, real quick, what do you think about this? Comment number 1 if you're raging at Kyle and Linda for doubting Nia's place, or number 2 if you think she should have called them out right then and there. Drop a like if you're rooting for Nia to flip the script, and hit subscribe to catch how she takes this fight to the sky. Tell me, folks, have you ever been judged like that just for showing up? Now, what's going to happen when Nia steps into that first-class cabin? Will the crew roll out the red carpet, or are they about to dig her an even deeper hole? Nia Carter sank into the plush leather of Seat 1A, the first-class cabin of Horizon Wing's Boeing 737, stretching out before her like a promise she'd written herself 6 years ago when she'd greenlit the redesign. The seats were wide, the armrests gleamed with polished wood, and a faint citrus scent hung in the air from the diffusers she'd insisted on installing to make every flight feel like an escape. She'd built this space for comfort, for excellence, a reward for passengers who paid top dollar to soar above the clouds. Now, it was her battleground. She tucked her small canvas bag under the seat ahead, her movements deliberate, her sharp brown eyes scanning the cabin as it filled. A white guy in a pinstripe suit settled into 1B across the aisle, loosening his tie with a sigh, his silver hair catching the overhead light. A middle-aged woman in a cashmere sweater took 2A, her pearls clicking softly as she adjusted her neck. Pillow. 2 tech bros in hoodies sprawled into 3A and 3B, already tapping at their laptops, their voices a low hum about some startup pitch in Seattle. All white, all breezing in with the ease of people who'd never had to prove they belonged here. Nia pulled her hoodie closer, her curls brushing her shoulders, and waited. She'd boarded despite Kyle and Linda's gateside stunt. Her victory, a quiet one, but the weight of their suspicion clung to her like damp fog. She flipped open her notebook, pen poised, ready to log every move the crew made. This audit wasn't just about numbers anymore. It was about whether the empire she'd forged actually lived up to the values she'd etched into its bones. The cabin door thudded shut, and the lead flight attendant stepped into view, a woman whose presence seemed to suck the warmth from the air. Brenda was a lanky figure in her late 40s, her auburn hair scraped back into a bun so tight it pulled. Her skin taut, her uniform crisp but somehow menacing like a soldier's fatigues. 20 years at Horizon, Nia knew from personnel files she'd skimmed last month. A veteran who'd weathered the airline's lean years, and bragged about it to anyone who'd listen. Her name tag glinted under the recessed lights, and her thin lips curved into a practiced smile that didn't touch her gray eyes as she moved down the aisle. She stopped at 1B first, her voice softening into a syrupy drawl. "Welcome aboard, sir. Champagne before takeoff?" The silver-haired guy, Tom, nodded with a grunt, and Brenda handed him a flute, the bubbles catching the light as she draped a warm towel over his armrest with a flourish. "Let me know if you need anything," she added, her smile widening, like they were sharing a secret. Nia watched, her pen still, as Brenda moved to the Pearl Lady in 2A, offering the same champagne, the same towel, her hands swift and attentive. The tech bros got a grin and a "you boys behaving today" that drew a laugh, their drinks poured before they'd even asked. Every stop was a performance, a little dance of service that Nia had trained her crews to perfect. But when Brenda reached 1A, she didn't stop. She breezed past Nia like she was a ghost, her heels clicking a steady rhythm as she headed for the galley. Not a glance, not a word. Nia's chest tightened, a slow burn spreading under her ribs. She leaned forward, her voice polite but firm, cutting through the cabin's hum. "Excuse me, could I have a glass of water, please?" Brenda froze mid-step, her shoulders stiffening, then turned slowly, her smile still plastered on but nowhere near her eyes, which narrowed as they locked onto Nia. "We're busy," she said, her tone sharp enough to slice. "Wait till takeoff." She spun away, her bun bobbing as she disappeared behind the curtain, leaving Nia with nothing but the echo of her dismissal. Tom sipped his champagne, oblivious. The Pearl Lady dabbed, her face with her towel, and the tech bros clinked their glasses, their laughter a dull roar in Nia's ears. She leaned back, her pen scratching fast across the notebook. Lead F.A. Brenda, 9:02 a.m. Ignored water request, served others pre-takeoff drinks and towels, snapped to wait. She underlined snapped once, her grip tight enough to dent the page. This wasn't oversight. This was a choice, a line drawn in the sand with Nia on the wrong side. The plane jolted as it taxied, the engines growling to life, and Brenda reappeared, her smile back in place as she checked on Tom again, refilling his glass without him asking. "Anything else, sir?" she purred, her voice a velvet glove over an iron fist. Tom waved her off, and she moved on, her eyes sliding past Nia like she was a smudge on the window. Nia's pulse quickened, her mind racing back to the gate, to Kyle's smirk, Linda's whisper. This wasn't random. It was a pattern, a quiet rebellion against her presence in a space they decided she didn't fit. She glanced at Tom, catching him watching her now, his brow furrowed like he was trying to figure out why she'd spoken up. She gave him a tight nod, keeping her cool, but inside, the burn was spreading, licking at her resolve. The plane lifted, off, the ground falling away as the cabin tilted, and Brenda returned with a tray of warm towels, her hands deft as she handed one to Tom, then the Pearl Lady, then the tech bros, each move smooth and rehearsed. Nia waited, her breath shallow, but Brenda passed her again, her stride unbroken, her silence louder than the engines outside. Nia's pen hovered, then stabbed the page. 9:15 a.m. Brenda distributed towels, skipped me entirely. She looked up just in time to catch Brenda leaning toward Jake, a younger attendant with a buzz cut and a nervous grin, their heads close as they whispered near the galley curtain. Nia's ears strained, catching fragments over the cabin noise. Entitled upgrades. Doesn't know her place. Brenda's voice was low, venomous, and Jake's snicker followed, quick and sharp, like a match striking flint. Nia's stomach twisted, a cold knot forming as the words sank in. Upgrades. She'd paid for this seat, fought for it past Kyle and Linda, and now Brenda was spinning a story that painted her as some freeloader crashing their precious first-class party. The plane leveled off, the seatbelt sign blinking off with a soft chime, and Nia unclenched her fists, her nails leaving crescent marks in her palms. She'd built this airline from nothing, turned it into a machine that flew 100 planes a day, carried millions of passengers a year, and raked in profits that silenced every skeptic who'd called her a diversity hire. She'd sat in boardrooms with men twice her age, their faces sour as she outmaneuvered them. her MBA from UT Austin a shield against their doubts. Her parents had scrubbed floors and driven taxis to get her here, and she'd repaid them with an empire. But to Brenda, she was just a body to ignore, a voice to dismiss, a threat to whatever warped order she clung to. Nia's eyes locked on Brenda's back as she bustled in the galley, her movements brisk, her authority unchallenged by the crew who scurried around her like she was queen of this flying castle. Nia could have called her out, could have stood up and demanded the water, the towel, the respect she'd earned 1,000 times over, but she didn't. Not yet. She'd learned long ago that timing was everything, that letting the rope play out could hang the ones holding it. She flipped her notebook shut, tucking it into her hoodie pocket, her mind a storm of plans and payback. Brenda thought she'd won this round, thought she could freeze Nia out and keep her little kingdom intact. She had no clue she'd just stepped into a war she couldn't win. Nia leaned back, the leather cool against her neck, and let her eyes drift to the window, the clouds rolling past like a promise of what was coming. She'd boarded this plane to test her airline, but now it was testing her, and she'd be damned if she let it break her. Brenda's whisper echoed in her head, "Doesn't know her place," and a grim smile tugged at Nia's lips. Oh, she knew her place. It was at the top, and she'd make sure every last one of them remembered it. Nia Carter sat rigid in seat 1A, the hum of the Horizon Wings 737 at 35,000 feet, a steady pulse beneath her feet. The cabin lights dimmed to a soft glow that did nothing to ease the fire smoldering in her chest. The plane had leveled, off 20 minutes ago, the clouds outside a thick white blanket rolling past her window. But inside, the air crackled with a tension only she seemed to feel. Her notebook lay open on her lap, the pen in her hand trembling slightly as she scratched another line. 9:35 a.m. Meal service begins. She'd watched Brenda glide through first class like a hawk circling prey, her auburn bun bobbing as she served the cabin with a precision that bordered on mechanical. Tom in 1B got a steaming plate of prime rib, the aroma of seared beef wafting across the aisle, a linen napkin folded neatly beside it. The Pearl Lady in 2A beamed as Brenda set down a matching dish. Her, "Oh, this looks divine," met with a nod and a murmured, "Only the best for you." The tech bros in 3A and 3B grinned as their trays landed, prime rib for one, a grilled chicken option for the other, both plated with a chef's flourish Nia had approved in last year's service. Overhaul. Every passenger in first class got the royal treatment, their smiles widening as Brenda checked in, her voice a warm hum of attentiveness. Every passenger except Nia. Brenda reached her row last, her gray eyes flicking over Nia like she was a stain on the upholstery, and dropped a tray onto her table with a thud that rattled the plastic cutlery. No linen napkin, no warm greeting, just a soggy Caesar salad, the lettuce wilted, the dressing pooling in a gray puddle that smelled faintly of vinegar gone bad. Nia's stomach churned, not from hunger, but from the slap of it, the deliberate, downgrade screaming louder than words. "I ordered the prime rib," she said, her voice steady but edged with steel, loud enough to cut through the cabin's low chatter. Brenda paused, one hand on her hip, her lips curling into a smirk that didn't bother hiding its contempt. "We're out," she said, her tone flat, final, like she was daring Nia to push back. "The salmon's good, though. You'll live." She turned to walk away, her heels clicking a dismissive rhythm, but Nia's hand shot up, stopping her cold. "You're not out," Nia said, nodding toward Tom's plate, the prime rib glistening. Under the light, a bite already missing. He got it. So did she. She jerked her chin at the Pearl Lady, who glanced over with a flicker of unease. Brenda's smirk faltered, just for a second, then hardened into something uglier. "Must have miscounted," she said, shrugging like it was nothing, her eyes daring Nia to make a scene. "Salad's what you've got. Take it or leave it." She spun away, her stride brisk as she headed for the galley, leaving Nia staring at the limp greens, her pulse hammering in her ears. The cabin seemed to shrink, the walls pressing in as the insult sank deep, a knife twisting in a wound she'd carried since she was a kid getting side-eye for daring to dream big. She'd built this airline, handpicked every menu item, signed off on every training manual, and here was Brenda, treating her like she'd snuck in through a back door. Nia shoved the tray aside, her hands trembling now, not with fear, but with a rage she could taste, bitter and sharp on her tongue. She glanced around, catching Tom's curious stare, the tech bro's muffled chuckles, the Pearl lady's averted gaze. They saw it, felt it, but none of them moved. None of them cared enough to call it out. She was alone in this, just like she'd been alone climbing every rung to the top. Enough. She unbuckled her seatbelt, the click loud in the quiet cabin, and stood, her sneakers silent on the carpet as she marched toward the galley, her hoodie swishing with each determined step. The curtain parted, revealing Brenda and Jake, the buzz-cut attendant from earlier, leaning close over a tray of coffee, cups, their voices a low hiss. "People who don't belong up here," Brenda was saying, her words a venomous jab that hit Nia square in the gut. Jake snickered, a quick, nervous sound, nodding like a kid eager to please. "Yeah, acting like she owns the place," he, muttered, pouring cream into a cup meant for someone else, someone who fit their mold. Nia's blood roared, a tidal wave crashing through her veins, and she stepped into the galley, her shadow falling over them like a storm cloud. "I do own the place," she said, her voice a low growl that stopped them dead. Brenda whirled, her face a mask of shock then disbelief, her gray eyes narrowing as she took in Nia's hoodie, her curls, her fury. "Excuse me?" she snapped, crossing her arms like a shield. Nia stepped closer, her breath hot, her words slicing the air. "I'm Nia Carter, your CEO, and you're done treating me like trash on my own damn plane." Jake's jaw dropped, the cream pitcher slipping in his hand, a white splash hitting the counter. Brenda blinked, then laughed, a harsh barking sound that echoed off the galley walls. "Nice try," she said, her smirk back sharper now. "But I've been here 20 years. I'd know the CEO if I saw her. Sit down before you embarrass yourself." Nia's vision tunneled, the edges blurring as her rage boiled over, a volcano she couldn't hold back. She lunged past Brenda, snatching the intercom from its cradle on the wall, her fingers slamming the button as her voice exploded through the cabin, trembling but unyielding. "This is Nia Carter, CEO of Horizon Wings. Effective immediately. This entire crew is fired for gross misconduct. Captain, divert to Portland. We're landing now." The line went dead, the silence that followed a vacuum sucking the air from the plane. Passengers gasped, heads whipping around, Tom's champagne sloshing as he twisted in his seat. The tech bros froze, laptops forgotten, their mouths open like fish on a hook. Brenda's face drained of color, her smirk gone, her hands balling, into fists as she stared at Nia, disbelief morphing into something darker, something that promised this wasn't over. Jake stumbled back, knocking over a stack of cups, the clatter loud in the stunned galley. Nia stood her ground, chest heaving, the intercom still warm in her hand as the plane's engines shifted, a subtle tilt signaling the captain obeying her order. She'd done it, flipped the script, taken back the power they'd tried to strip from her. The cabin buzzed, whispers rising like static, passengers craning to see her, some nodding, others glaring, but all of them feeling the weight of what she'd just unleashed. She'd built Horizon from a dying dream into a titan, fought off every doubter who'd called her too young, too black, too female to lead, and now she'd torched her own crew mid-flight to prove a point. Her eyes locked on Brenda's, a silent challenge blazing between them, and for a moment she thought she'd won, thought she'd crushed the rot right then and there. The plane banked left, Portland looming closer, and Nia turned back to her seat, her steps steady despite the adrenaline pumping through her veins. She'd fired them, sent a message that echoed from the cockpit to the tail, a line in the sand no one could cross. Her notebook slid back into her pocket, her pen capped. Her mind already racing to the landing, the debrief, the next move. She'd faced Kyle's smirk, Linda's gate games, Brenda's freeze-out, and turned it all to ash with one call. 6 years of grit, of proving she belonged, had led to this, a mid-air reckoning that felt like justice. But as she sank into 1A, the leather cool against her flush skin, Brenda's laugh lingered in her head, that harsh defiant bark that said she didn't believe, didn't bend, didn't break. Nia's victory tasted sharp, sweet, but incomplete, a half-finished fight she couldn't shake. The plane descended, the clouds parting to reveal Portland's gray sprawl below, and Nia braced herself, knowing this was just the start. She'd lit the fuse, but the explosion was still coming. Bigger, uglier, and closer than she could guess. Brenda's glare burned into her back, a promise of retaliation Nia couldn't hear but could feel. A storm brewing in the silence as the wheels touched down. The Horizon Wing 737 jolted as its wheels kissed the tarmac at Portland International Airport. A hard thud that rattled the overhead bins and snapped Nia Carter back into her seat, her hands gripping the armrests of 1A like they were lifelines. The cabin erupted, a cacophony of gasps and shouts bouncing off the walls as the plane screeched to a stop, brakes screaming against the runway's wet asphalt. Passengers unbuckled, twisting in their seats, some cheering Nia's mid-flight takedown, like she'd just scored a touchdown, others hissing curses under their breath, their faces twisted with annoyance at the detour. Tom in 1B clutched his half-spilled champagne, his silver hair wild, muttering, "Well, damn," while the tech bros in 3A and 3B whooped, one yelling, "That's how you handle it." Nia's chest heaved, her breath ragged, the intercom still, a phantom weight in her palm from 5 minutes ago when she'd fired the crew mid-air, her voice a thunderclap that had flipped this flight upside down. The captain's announcement crackled through the speakers, calm but clipped. "Folks, we've made an unscheduled landing in Portland per the CEO's directive. Please remain seated." But the galley curtain ripped open, and Brenda stormed out, her auburn bun askew, her gray eyes blazing with a fury that could have melted steel. She didn't head for Nia. She bolted for the cockpit, her heels pounding the carpet, Jake trailing behind her like a scolded puppy, his buzz cut gleaming with sweat. "This is insane," Brenda bellowed, slamming her fist against the cockpit door, the sound a gunshot in the chaos. "Captain, she's lost it. Override this hysterical outburst now." Nia stood, her sneakers silent as she moved into the aisle, her hoodie swishing, her sharp brown eyes locked on Brenda's back. The passengers quieted, a hush falling as they watched, some craning their necks, others pulling out phones, the red dots of cameras blinking like fireflies. The cockpit door creaked open, and Captain Paul emerged, a grizzled man in his 50s with a salt and pepper beard and a face carved from years of flying through storms. His uniform was crisp, his posture steady, but his hazel eyes flickered with uncertainty as they darted from Brenda to Nia. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice a low rumble, hands on his hips. Brenda spun, jabbing a finger at Nia, her voice rising to a shriek. "This woman claims she's the CEO, fires us mid-flight like some dictator, and you're just gonna let her tank this operation? She's a fraud." Jake nodded furiously, his hands flapping as he chimed in. "Yeah, no way she's Nia Carter. She's gotta be bluffing." Nia stepped closer, her jaw tight, her words slow and deliberate, cutting through their noise like a blade. "Check with HQ, Captain. I'm exactly who I say I am." Paul hesitated, his brow furrowing, then ducked back into the cockpit, the door clicking shut behind him. Brenda smirked, folding her arms, her stance daring Nia to crumble. The cabin held its breath, the air thick with anticipation. The hum of the idling engines a steady heartbeat beneath it all. Nia stood tall, her curls framing a face that radiated defiance, her mind racing back to the galley, to Brenda's sneer, to the salad tray dropped like a slap. She'd built this airline from a bankrupt shell, turned it into a juggernaut with her own hands, and now her own crew was calling her a liar on her own plane. Paul re-emerged, his face grim, holding a radio that crackled with static. "HQ confirms," he said, his voice heavy. "She's Nia Carter, CEO. Orders stand." Brenda's smirk vanished, her face paling to a sickly white, her fists clenching, as the words sank in. Jake stammered, but, before his voice died, his shoulders slumping. The captain nodded at Nia, a flicker of respect in his eyes, then turned to Brenda. "You're off the plane. Now." Passengers erupted, again some clapping, others shouting, "About time!" as airport security boarded, two burly guys in black vests weaving through the aisle. Brenda didn't go quietly. She spun on Nia, her voice a venomous hiss, spitting words like bullets. "You'll regret this, whoever you are. You think you can humiliate me and walk away? I've got 20 years and you're nothing. Security grabbed her arms, dragging her toward the exit, her heels scraping the floor as she thrashed, yelling, "This isn't over, Carter!" Jake followed, head down, muttering apologies to no one. The rest of the galley crew shuffling behind, their faces a mix of shame and shock. Nia watched them go, her pulse steadying, the chaos settling into a strange calm as the cabin door slammed shut behind them. She'd won, ripped the rod out mid-flight, sent a message that echoed from Dallas to Portland. The passengers settled, some nodding at her with wary admiration, others glaring like she'd ruined their day. She sank back into 1A, pulling out, her phone to brief her ground team, her fingers flying over the screen as she typed, "Flight diverted, crew terminated for misconduct, audit exposed systemic bias, debrief ASAP." She hit send, leaning back, the leather cool against her neck, her mind already mapping the fallout. She'd turned a routine check into a public reckoning, proved she wouldn't bend, not even for her own people. The plane taxied to a gate, the jet bridge locking into place with a thud, and Nia stood, ready to face the storm she'd unleashed. She'd fired them, taken control, thought she'd crushed the rebellion in one bold move. But as she grabbed her bag, her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number lighting up the screen in stark white letters. "This isn't over, Carter." Her breath caught, a chill racing down her spine as she stared at the words, the sender hidden, the threat raw and real. She'd won the battle, sent Brenda packing, but that hiss, that promise of revenge, lingered like smoke after a fire. The cabin emptied, passengers streaming past, some whispering her name, others avoiding her gaze. But Nia stood frozen, the text glowing in her hand. She'd built Horizon Wings on fairness, on excellence, fought off every doubter who'd said a black woman couldn't run an airline, and now, mid-flight, she'd burned her own crew to prove it. 6 years of grit, of late nights and impossible odds, had led to this, a victory that felt like a fist raised to the sky. But that text, those 5 words, punched a hole in it, a warning she couldn't ignore. She tucked the phone away, her resolve hardening as she stepped off the plane, the Portland air sharp and cold against her skin. Brenda's scream echoed in her head. "You'll regret this." And now this message, a shadow moving just out of sight. Nia had thought she'd ended it, thought she'd cut the head off the snake, but something bigger was coiling, ready to strike. Hey folks, what do you think about Nia's move? Comment number 1 if you're cheering her for kicking Brenda to the curb, or number 2 if you think she went too far and should have kept it cool. Drop a like if you're hooked on this fight for justice, and hit subscribe to see how deep this rabbit hole goes. Tell me, have you ever had to stand up like that and shut down the haters? Now here's the real kicker. Who's behind that creepy text? Is Brenda plotting from the shadows? Or has Nia just poked a beast she can't yet see? Nia Carter strode into the Horizon Wings headquarters in Dallas, the glass doors hissing shut behind her as she crossed the polished marble lobby, her sneakers squeaking against the floor, a stark contrast to the click of heels from execs bustling past. The Portland landing was 6 hours behind her, the plane's diverted carcass now a ghost in her mind. But that text, "This isn't over, Carter," still burned in her pocket, a live coal she couldn't shake. She'd flown back on a red-eye, her hoodie swapped for a crisp blazer, her curls tamed into a low bun, every inch the CEO she'd fought to become. The building hummed with morning energy, staff darting between cubicles, the faint clatter of keyboards mixing with the buzz of phones. But the air felt heavier today, charged with something she couldn't name. She'd called an emergency meeting with her executive team, expecting a war room of support after the mid-flight firing, a united front to tackle the rot she'd exposed. She'd built this place from a sinking ship into a titan, and they'd stood by her through every storm. Or so she thought. The boardroom loomed ahead, a sleek rectangle of glass and steel, the Dallas skyline sprawling beyond floor-to-ceiling windows, a gray haze of heat shimmering over the city. Nia pushed the door open, her sharp brown eyes sweeping the table as her team settled, their faces a mix of curiosity and unease. Marcus, her CFO, a wiry black man with a goatee and a knack for numbers, nodded from the far end, his tablet glowing with data. Letitia, VP of HR, sat beside him. Her braids coiled high, her expression unreadable behind gold-rimmed glasses. But it was Greg Hensley, her COO, who caught her off guard. 55, white, broad-shouldered with a buzz of gray hair. He'd been with Horizon since its puddle jumper days, a relic of the old guard she'd kept on for his operational grit. His blue eyes met hers, cool and distant, his hands folded like he was waiting for something to break. Nia dropped her bag on the table, standing at the head, her voice steady as she launched in. Flight 182, Dallas to Seattle, diverted to Portland. I fired the crew mid-air for blatant misconduct. Audit showed systemic bias. Gate agent questioned my ticket. Supervisor tried to bump me. Lead attendant froze me out. We've got a problem, and it's not just one flight. She tapped her phone, projecting her notes onto the screen behind her. Kyle's smirk, Linda's gate stunt, Brenda's galley jab scrolling in black and white. Marcus leaned forward, frowning. That's ugly. We've got metrics showing service gaps by race, but this is next level. Letitia nodded, scribbling on her pad. Training's failing us somewhere. But Greg shifted, his chair creaking as he leaned back, his voice a slow drawl that cut the room's hum. Nia, you sure you didn't overreact? Firing a crew mid-flights, a hell of a statement. Morale's gonna tank and the stock's already jittery. Nia's jaw tightened, her fingers curling against the table's edge. Overreact? They treated me like I didn't belong on my own plane, Greg. That's not a one-off, it's a culture leak. We fix it hard, or it festers. He shrugged, his lips thinning. Sure, it's bad, but you've got 10,000 employees. You can't torch morale over a few bad apples. Investors won't like the optics. CEO losing it mid-air? That's a headline we don't need. Nia's pulse spiked, a hot flush climbing her neck. She'd expected pushback, but not this. Not from Greg, who'd seen her turn Horizon around, who'd toasted her at last year's gala when profits hit record highs. Optics? She said, her voice low, dangerous. The optic I care about is passengers getting equal treatment. You want to talk numbers? I've got 6 years of them proving I don't lose it. Greg's eyes flickered, a glint of something hard beneath the calm, but he held her gaze unyielding. Just saying there's a cost. You're the boss, but this could bite us. The room stilled, Marcus and Letitia exchanging glances, the tension a live wire snapping between them. Nia ended the meeting, her orders sharp. Audit every crew, suspend Kyle and Linda pending review, draft a company statement. She thought she'd rallied them, thought she'd held the line. But as she left for her office, the walls seemed to close in, Greg's words a splinter she couldn't dig out. Hours later, her phone lit up with a news alert. Horizon Wings, CEO fires crew in mid-air tantrum. Her stomach dropped, the headline a gut punch, the article spinning her audit into a meltdown, quoting anonymous sources saying she'd snapped under pressure. She scrolled X, her screen flooding with bile. Diversity hire gone rogue, can't handle the big chair, typical entitlement. The racist trolls piling on like vultures on a corpse. She slammed the phone down, her breath ragged, her mind racing to Brenda's parting scream. That text, the pieces clicking too fast to grasp. This wasn't just blowback, it was a hit. She called PR, demanding a counterstatement, but the damage was spreading, stock dipping 3 points by noon. She pushed forward, suspending Kyle and Linda via email, their files flagged for termination, her pen slashing through their names like a blade. She thought she'd stemmed the bleed, thought she'd regained control. But that night, alone in her office, the lights of Dallas glittering beyond her window, she caught a flicker on her security feed. Greg, in a dimly lit parking lot, shaking, hands with Brenda, her auburn hair unmistakable under a street lamp, their heads bent close, plotting. Nia's breath caught, a cold sweat beating on her brow as she zoomed in, their lips moving. No audio, but the intent clear as day. Greg, her right hand, the man she'd trusted to run ops, was in bed with the enemy she'd just axed. She dug deeper, pulling call logs from IT, her fingers flying over her laptop, and found it. Greg's burner phone pinging Brenda's number hours after the landing, then a call to a tabloid tip line. He'd leaked it, spun it, turned her stand into a scandal. Worse, A video hit X at midnight, grainy footage of Nia shoving Brenda in the galley. The attendant's face bruised, her scream overdubbed, doctored, obvious to Nia, but viral. By morning, racking up 1 million views. The hashtag Horizon Meltdown trending. She'd built this company from nothing. A black woman who'd outsmarted every suit who'd sneered at her. Her MBA a war trophy. Her 6-year reign a testament to grit. She'd faced bias before. The whispers at conferences. The shock when she walked into boardrooms. But this? This was her own house turning on her. Her own team sharpening the knife. Greg's betrayal cut deeper than Brenda's sneer. A wound she hadn't seen coming. She'd fired the crew, held the line, thought she'd won. But now the war was inside, the walls she'd built crumbling under her feet. She leaned back, the leather chair creaking, her eyes on the skyline as the city blurred through a haze of exhaustion and rage. The stock ticker on her screen blinked red, down 5 points now, the trolls howling louder, the video spreading like wildfire. She'd exposed the rot, but Greg had turned it into a weapon, and Brenda was his trigger. That text, "This isn't over, Carter," flashed in her mind, not just Brenda's voice now, but Greg's, a chorus of revenge she'd underestimated. She'd climbed too high, shone too bright, and they wanted her down, broken, erased. Nia stood, her blazer rustling as she paced, her mind a storm of plans. Call forensic techs, trace the video, confront Greg before he dug deeper. She'd beaten, worse odds, turned a dying airline into a giant, and she'd be damned if she let them bury her now. The meeting replayed, Greg's cool stare, his warning about morale, a mask for the blade he'd already sharpened. She'd thought she'd cut the snake's head off in Portland, but it had grown 2 more and they were striking from within. Her phone buzzed again, another alert. The stock sliding, the trolls relentless. But she silenced it, her resolve hardening into iron. This wasn't just about a flight anymore. It was about her empire, her legacy, and she'd fight tooth and nail to keep it. Nia Carter stood at the podium in Horizon Wings' Dallas HQ press room, the glare of camera lights searing her skin, her blazer crisp despite the exhaustion carving lines under her sharp brown eyes. 24 hours had passed since the Horizon meltdown. Video hit X, 1 million views morphing into 5 million, the fake footage of her shoving Brenda looping endlessly online, the trolls feasting on her name like it was carrion. She'd barely slept, her office a war zone of laptops and coffee cups, her team scrambling to counter the smear Greg had unleashed. Now, she faced the press, her voice steady as she sliced through the chaos. "The video is a fabrication," she said, her words a hammer striking steel. "Forensic analysis proves it. Timestamps don't match, audio's overdubbed, the bruise is CGI. This is a targeted attack on Horizon Wings, and we're fighting back." Behind her, a screen flashed, the evidence, graphs, and pixel breakdowns her tech crew had pulled all night, irrefutable proof she'd never touched Brenda. Reporters scribbled, cameras whirred, and for a moment, Nia felt the tide shift, the room's energy tilting her way. Stock alerts pinged on her phone, up 2 points since dawn, a fragile recovery, but a win. She'd built this company from a bankrupt wreck, defied every doubter who'd called her a token, and she'd be damned if she let a lie bury her now. The questions came fast. Who's behind it? Any suspects? Legal action? And she answered with precision, her MBA honed, mind a blade cutting through the noise. "We're investigating," she said, "and those responsible will face consequences." She stepped off the stage, her sneakers silent on the carpet, her chest lighter than it had been since Portland. She'd turned it around, snatched victory from the jaws of Greg's betrayal, and as she headed for the elevator, Marcus caught her elbow, his goatee twitching with a rare grin. "You nailed it, Nia. Social's flipping. People see the truth." She nodded, a flicker of relief warming her gut. But the elevator doors hadn't even closed when her phone buzzed again, an unknown number flashing. She ignored it, assuming another troll, and stepped into her hotel suite an hour later, the Dallas skyline a muted glow beyond the window. She checked in here after the red-eye, needing space from HQ's chaos, and now she kicked off her shoes, the carpet soft under, her feet ready to crash. The knock came like a gunshot, loud and sharp, shattering the quiet. She froze mid-step, her pulse kicking up as the door rattled again. Harder. "Portland PD! Open up, Carter!" The voice was gruff, insistent, and Naya's stomach dropped, a cold wave washing over her as she crossed the room, peering through the peephole. 2 cops stood outside, badges glinting, faces hard. One a stocky white guy with a buzz cut, the other a taller black officer, his jaw tight, both in uniforms that screamed authority. She opened the door, her voice calm despite the tremor in her chest. "What's this about?" The stocky cop stepped forward, his hand on his belt, his blue eyes cold as ice. "Nia Carter, you're under arrest for assaulting Brenda Mitchell on Flight 182. Hands where we can see him." Nia's breath caught, a laugh bubbling up bitter and incredulous. "Assault? I just proved that video's fake. This is a joke, right?" The black cop's gaze flickered, a shadow of doubt crossing his face, but his partner shoved past, cuffing her wrists with a click that echoed in the suite. "Sworn affidavit from Jake Ellis, and a passenger says otherwise. Photo evidence too. You're coming with us." They dragged her out, her blazer sleeve catching on the doorframe, the hallway a blur of beige walls and stunned hotel staff gawking as she stumbled. Barefoot behind them. Downstairs, a squad car waited, lights flashing, reporters already swarming, their shouts a roar. "Nia, why'd you do it? Is Horizon finished?" As the cops shoved her into the back seat, the door slamming shut like a coffin lid. At the station, they tossed a grainy photo on the table, Brenda's face bruised, her eye swollen shut, a timestamp claiming it was snapped post-flight. Nia stared, her mind racing, the image a crude edit, the lighting off, the bruise too perfect. But Jake's affidavit sat beside it, his scrawl claiming she'd snapped and hit Brenda in the galley, a passenger in 2B backing it up with a shaky signature. "This is bullshit," Nia said, her voice a low growl. "You've got my press conference, the forensics. They're lying." The stocky cop smirked, leaning back in his chair. "Tell it to the judge." Her lawyer, a wiry woman named Claire, with a steel-trap mind, got her out on bail by midnight, the station's fluorescent buzz fading as Nia stepped into the cool Portland night, her wrists raw from the cuffs. Claire's car idled curbside, and Nia sank in, her head pounding, the city's lights a smear through the window. "They bribed someone," Claire said, her voice tight. "Passengers a plant. Jake scared or paid. This is retaliation." Nia nodded, her mind replaying Greg's parking lot handshake with Brenda. The text, the video. Pieces of a puzzle snapping together too late. She'd won the press war, thought she'd crushed the lie, but they'd hit back harder, turned her victory into a trap. Back at the hotel, her phone lit up with alerts. Horizon CEO arrested, assault charges, and a call from the board chair, Evelyn, a stern 60-year-old who'd backed Nia's rise. "Step down, Nia," Evelyn said, her voice clipped. "Pending investigation. Stock's tanking, and we can't weather this." Nia's grip tightened, her voice a razor. "I didn't do it, Evelyn. It's a setup, and I'm not quitting." Silence stretched, then a sigh. "Your call, but it's bad. Think it over." The line went dead, and Nia tossed the phone onto the bed, her breath ragged, her blazer crumpled. On the floor. She'd beaten the video, rallied her team, thought she'd turned the tide. But now she was a suspect, her empire teetering, the board turning cold. She paced, the carpet rough against her bare feet, her mind a storm of fury and plans. Trace the bribe, expose Jake, fight the charges. She'd built Horizon from nothing, a black woman who'd outsmarted every doubter, her parents' sacrifices fueling her climb, and now they'd cuffed her like a criminal in her own story. But as she sank onto the bed, a new name clicked into place. Earl Tatum, a racist sheriff she'd crossed years ago when Horizon expanded into his county, rejecting his crony contracts. Greg's old school ties ran deep, and Earl hated her success, a black CEO thriving where he'd wanted control. She pulled her laptop, digging through old emails, finding a thread. Greg to Earl, vague but dated post-flight. "She's a problem. Handle it." Her blood chilled, the cuff sting flaring in her memory as the dots connected. She'd won the press fight, thought she'd dodged the bullet, but Greg had handed Earl the gun, and Brenda was the trigger. The arrest wasn't just revenge. It was a lynching by law, a move to break her where the video failed. Nia stood, her resolve hardening, her eyes on the skyline as dawn bled pink over Dallas. She'd faced worse: bankruptcy threats, boardroom coups, racist slurs at industry galas, and come out swinging every time. 6 years of grit, of proving she belonged, had led to this, a fight she hadn't seen coming but wouldn't back down from. The charges were fake, the photo a lie, but the board's ultimatum hung like a noose, and Earl's shadow loomed larger than Greg's betrayal. She'd thought Portland was the end, thought firing Brenda was the win, but this was war now. And they'd drawn first blood. Her phone buzzed again, stock down 8 points, the trolls louder. But she silenced it, her mind a blade sharpening for the next move. She'd beat this, expose them, take her company back. They'd cuffed her, but they hadn't broken her. Not yet. Nia Carter stood in the Portland courthouse, the air thick with the scent of polished wood and stale coffee, her blazer crisp over a white blouse, her sneakers swapped for low heels that clicked against the tile as she followed Claire, her lawyer, into the arraignment room. 3 days had passed since the Portland PD cuffed her in her hotel suite, the fake assault charges a noose tightening around her neck, the doctored photo of Brenda's bruised face a lie she'd sworn to shred. The press conference had been her lifeline, the forensic proof a shield, and now she was here to bury it for good. Her sharp brown eyes scanned the room, the judge's bench looming ahead, a grizzled man in black robes shuffling papers, the prosecutor, a wiry white guy with a smirk that matched Kyle's gateside grin. Jake sat in the witness box, his buzz cut damp with sweat, his hands fidgeting as he avoided her gaze. The gallery buzzed, reporters cramming the back, their pens poised, the weight of Horizon Wing's fate pressing down like a storm cloud. Nia took her seat, her pulse steady, Claire beside her whispering, "We've got this." Jake's story's full of holes. The hearing kicked off, the prosecutor laying out the assault charge with a smug flourish, waving the photo like a flag. Jake's affidavit a flimsy prop. Claire stood, her voice a scalpel tearing into it. "Your Honor, the video's debunked. Timestamps don't align, audio's fake. This photo, lighting's off, metadata's scrubbed. And Jake Ellis? Let's hear him." Jake squirmed as Claire grilled him, her questions sharp. "Where'd the bruise come from? Why'd you wait to report? Who paid you?" His answers crumbling, a stuttered mess of, "I saw her hit Brenda," morphing into, "Well, maybe I didn't see clear." The judge's gavel banged, his voice gruff. "Witness dismissed. Charges dropped. Insufficient evidence." Nia exhaled, a rush of air she'd held since the cuffs, her shoulders easing as Claire squeezed her arm, a rare smile breaking through. The gallery erupted, reporters shouting, "Nia, what's next? Horizon safe now?" As she stood, her head high, the weight lifting like a fog burning off. She'd beaten it, turned Greg's frame up to dust, proved the lie in a courtroom packed with eyes. The stock would climb, the trolls would scatter, and she'd walk out free, her empire intact. She stepped into the hall, the courthouse doors swinging open to a blast of Portland's gray drizzle, her heels steady on the wet stone steps, Claire trailing with a nod. "Told you," Claire said. "They had nothing." Nia smiled, faint, but real, the first in days, her mind already on Dallas, on firing Greg, on rebuilding what they'd tried to break. She'd built Horizon from a bankrupt husk, defied every racist suit who'd sneered at her rise, and now she'd dodged their bullet again. The steps emptied, reporters peeling off, and she thought she'd won, thought she'd crushed it clean. Then the ambush hit. A squad of sheriff's deputies swarmed from the shadows, 6 burly figures in tan uniforms, batons gleaming, led by Earl Tatum himself, a hulking white man with a buzz cut and a scar slashing his cheek, his brown eyes glinting with hate. Nia froze, her breath catching as Earl barked, "Nia Carter, hold it right there." His deputies circled, boots stomping, and before Claire could shout, they grabbed Nia's arms, twisting them back, her blazer ripping at the seam. "Random search," Earl growled, his voice a gravelly taunt. "Got a tip you're carrying." Nia struggled, her heels slipping. "This is illegal. I just cleared court." But Earl smirked. nodding to a deputy who yanked her bag, dumping it on the steps, phone, notebook, keys scattering in the rain. Another patted her down, rough hands shoving her against a pillar, and then he pulled a baggie from her blazer pocket, white powder glinting inside, a triumphant grin splitting his face. "Well, looky here," Earl said, holding it up. "Cocaine. You're under arrest, Carter." Nia's stomach plummeted, her voice a roar. "That's not mine. You planted it." But the cuffs snapped on, colder than before, the metal biting her wrists as deputies dragged her to a van, the courthouse steps a blur of whetstone and shocked gasps from stragglers. Claire lunged, shouting, "This is entrapment! I'll sue!" "Your ass, Tatum." But Earl waved her off, his scar twitching as he leaned close to Nia, his breath sour with tobacco. "Big shot CEO don't mean squat here, girl. Should have stayed in your lane." They shoved her into the van. The door, slamming and peeled out, Portland's gray street smearing past the tinted window. The rural jail was 40 miles out, a squat brick box ringed by barbed wire, the air inside stale with sweat and bleach. Earl hauled her to a cell, his deputies snickering as he tossed her in, the bars clanging shut. "Fancy lady like you," he sneered. "Gonna love it here." He leaned against the bars, his voice a low hiss. "Thought you'd strut out of my county scot-free? I run this show and you're done." Nia stood, her blazer torn, her wrists raw, her eyes blazing as she met his stare. "You're a coward, Earl. This won't stick." He laughed, a guttural sound, and walked off, his boots echoing down, the hall leaving her in the dim cell, the fluorescent buzz a drone in her ears. Her team got her out by nightfall, Claire pulling strings, bail posted, but the damage was done. News hit. Horizon CEO arrested again, drug bust, and a federal probe launched. DEA agents raiding Horizon's Portland hub, claiming the cocaine tied to trafficking. Nia sat in Claire's car, her breath fogging the window, the rural dark pressing in as they sped back to the city. "Greg's behind this," Claire said, her knuckles white on the wheel. "And Earl's his muscle. That tip? Too perfect." Nia nodded, her mind replaying Earl's smirk, Greg's parking lot deal, the text. "This isn't over, Carter." Now a chorus with Earl's voice added, a racist sheriff she'd humiliated years ago by cutting his cronies from Horizon's contracts. She'd won in court, thought she'd dodged the bullet, but they'd reloaded with a bigger gun, turned her triumph into a frame-up that hit harder than the assault lie. The feds were circling, her board texting ultimatums, the stock plunging, 10 points in hours. She'd built Horizon from nothing, a black woman who'd outsmarted every doubter, her parents' grit in her veins, and now they'd dragged her to a cell, planted drugs to break her where the law couldn't. Nia's resolve hardened, her torn blazer a badge as she stared into the night. She'd beaten worse, bankruptcy, bias, betrayal, and she'd beat this, expose Earl, gut Greg, save her empire. They'd thought they'd won, thought they'd caged her, but she was still standing, still fighting, and they'd pay. Hey folks, what's your take on this twist? Comment number 1 if you're raging at Earl for framing Nia, or number 2 if you think she should have seen this ambush coming after crossing him. Drop a like if you're hooked on her fight against this dirty game, and hit subscribe to catch how she claws her way out. Ever been blindsided like that when you thought you'd won? Now buckle up. How's Nia gonna dodge the feds and strike back when her own board's turning against her? Nia Carter stormed into Horizon Wing's Dallas headquarters, the glass doors slamming shut behind her with a hiss that echoed through the marble lobby, her torn blazer hanging off her shoulders like a battle flag, her sharp brown eyes blazing with a fury that could have scorched the walls. 3 days had passed since Earl Tatum's deputies dragged her from the Portland courthouse steps, the planted cocaine baggie a grenade that blew open a federal probe, DEA agents swarming her Portland hub, grounding planes with safety violation, warrants tied to the frame-up. She'd bailed out of that rural cell, Claire's legal wizardry her lifeline, but the damage was a tidal wave, stock down 15 points, headlines screaming Horizon CEO and drug scandal, her board texting ultimatums, like vultures circling a corpse. She'd built this empire from a bankrupt husk, a black woman who'd outsmarted every doubter, and now they were tearing it apart, piece by piece. She'd flown back on a red-eye, her mind a storm of plans, her heels clicking as she bypassed the elevator, taking the stairs 2 at a time to the boardroom, her breath ragged but her resolve ironclad. The room loomed ahead, glass walls framing a table where her execs waited, their faces a gallery of tension. Marcus scribbling numbers, Letitia adjusting her glasses, Evelyn, the board chair, staring out at the Dallas skyline with a frown. Greg Hensley sat at the far end, his broad shoulders squared, his blue eyes cool as ice. The traitor who'd shaken Brenda's hand in that parking lot, who'd fed Earl the ammo to bury her. Nia burst in, her voice a whip cracking the silence. "Greg, you're done. I've got your calls to Brenda, your tip to the tabloids, your email to Earl Tatum. You framed me, sabotaged me, and I'm firing you right now." She slapped a folder on the table, printouts spilling, burner phone logs, security stills. The email. "She's a problem. Handle it." The room froze, Marcus's pen halting, Letitia's jaw dropping, Evelyn turning slow, her gray eyes narrowing. Greg smirked, leaning back, his chair creaking as he folded his arms. "You've got nothing, Nia. Paranoia doesn't prove squat." But Nia stepped closer, her finger jabbing the air, her words a blade. "It traced it, Greg. You're cooked. Board vote now, he's out or I walk." Evelyn cleared her throat, her voice clipped. "We've seen the evidence. All in favor?" Hands shot up. Marcus, Letitia, 3 others. Greg's smirk faltered, his face reddening as Evelyn nodded. "You're terminated, Hensley. Security's waiting." He stood, chair scraping, his glare a promise of venom as he stormed out, the door banging shut behind him. Nia exhaled, her chest loosening, the room rallying as Marcus grinned. "About damn time." And Letitia added, "He's been poisoned too long." She'd done it, cut the snake's head off, turned the tide in one bold strike. The board backed her, Evelyn pledging support. "We're with you, Nia. Fix this." She called a press conference, her voice steady on the mic. "Greg Hensley's out for orchestrating a smear campaign. Horizon's clean and we're fighting back." Stock surged, up 10 points by noon, employees flooding her inbox with cheers. "We've got your back, boss." The trolls quieting as X shifted. Nia fights back trending. She sank into her office chair, the Dallas skyline a golden haze beyond the window. Her torn blazer draped over the back, her pulse steadying. She'd won, snatched her company from Greg's jaws, thought she'd crushed the rebellion clean. 6 years of grit, of proving she belonged, had led to this. A victory that felt like a fist raised to the sky, her empire hers again. But the counterstrike came fast, a sledgehammer she didn't see swinging. Her phone buzzed, an alert from Marcus, FAA grounding all Horizon planes, effective now. Safety violations tied to drug probe. Nia's stomach plummeted, her screen flashing news. Horizon fleet grounded, millions lost daily. She bolted to ops, the control room a chaos of blinking screens and shouting staff, flights canceling. Nationwide, Chicago, LA, Miami, red X's multiplying like bloodstains. Marcus met her, his goatee twitching. "It's a setup, Nia. Feds say the cocaine's linked to trafficking, but the warrants, signed by a judge in Earl's pocket." She dug in, calling Claire, pulling logs. But the truth hit harder. Victor Lang, CEO of Apex Air, Horizon's rival, had bribed regulators, his name buried in emails Claire unearthed from Greg's burner. Victor, a slick white exec with a private jet and a vendetta, had watched Horizon eat his market share for years, and now he'd struck, turning her win into ash. Planes sat idle, costs soaring, her empire bleeding out, and then her phone rang. Jamal, her younger brother, his voice a panicked rasp from Austin. "Nia, they took me! Guys in masks said resign or I'm dead!" The line cut, a photo pinging through. Jamal gagged, blood trickling from his temple, a note scrawled, "Step down, Carter, or he's gone." Nia's knees buckled, her breath a jagged sob as she gripped the desk, the room spinning, Marcus rushing to her side. "What's wrong?" She showed him, her voice breaking. "They've got Jamal." She'd beaten Greg, rallied the board, thought she'd won. But Victor had raised the stakes, turned her corporate coup into a personal nightmare. Her mind raced. Earl's goons, Victor's cash, a plot to gut her where she stood. She'd built Horizon from nothing, a black woman who'd defied every racist suit, Her parents' sacrifices her fuel. And now they'd taken her brother, grounded her planes, cornered her like a rat. She'd faced bankruptcy, bias, betrayal, and come out swinging, but this was a blow she couldn't dodge. Jamal's life, her company's soul, dangling by a thread. She stood, her torn blazer slipping, her eyes burning as she stared at the photo, his terrified face a mirror of her own 6 years ago when she'd started this fight. Victor didn't just want her out. He wanted her broken, and Earl was his fist, Greg his pawn, the feds his tool. The control room buzzed, staff scrambling, but Naya's world shrank to that image, her brother's blood a call to war. She'd thought firing Greg was the end, thought she'd reclaimed her throne, but they'd hit back harder, a double strike, corporate sabotage and personal loss that dwarfed the courthouse ambush. Her phone buzzed again, stock down 20 points, the board texting, "Resign, Nia, it's over." But she silenced it, her resolve hardening into steel. She'd saved Horizon before, outsmarted every enemy, and she'd do it again, find Jamal, expose Victor, burn them all. Claire burst in, laptop open. "I've got a lead. Victor's bribes, FAA paper trail. We can fight this." Nia nodded, her voice a growl. "Get me everything. They took my brother, grounded my planes. I'm not stepping down, I'm taking them down." She'd climbed too high, shone too bright, and they wanted her erased. But she'd built this empire with her bare hands, her parents' grit in her bones, and she'd be damned if she let it fall. The grounding cost millions, Jamal's life, hung in the balance, and her victory tasted like ash, a fleeting high before the abyss opened. She paced, the skyline blurring through tears she wouldn't let fall, her mind a blade sharpening for the next move. They'd thought they'd won, thought they'd broken her, but Nia Carter didn't break. She fought, and they'd pay in blood. Nia Carter crouched in the shadows of a rotting barn 40 miles west of Portland, the night air thick with the stench of damp wood and cow dung, her torn blazer swapped for a black jacket, her sharp brown eyes glinting under a knit cap as she clutched a burner phone. 12 hours had passed since Jamal's kidnapping photo hit her screen, his bloodied face a dagger in her gut. The note, "Step down, Carter, or he's gone," a ticking clock she couldn't outrun. Victor Lang, Apex Air's CEO, had grounded her fleet, bled Horizon dry with bribes to the FAA, but taking her brother was a line she'd make him bleed for crossing. Claire's lead on Victor's paper trail had sparked hope, but a tip from a loyal Horizon pilot, Sam, lit the fuse. Jamal was here, stashed in this rural hellhole by Earl Tatum's goons. Nia had hired muscle, 3 ex-Marines in tactical gear, their faces hard as stone, weapons holstered but ready, their breaths fogging in the Oregon chill. She'd tracked the burner's ping, Sam's intel narrowing it to this barn, a sagging relic surrounded by skeletal trees, the moon a sliver casting jagged shadows. Her heels were long gone, traded for boots that sank into the mud as she signaled the team, her voice a low hiss. "In and out. No noise till we've got him." They nodded, fanning out, and Nia led, her heart pounding a war drum as she crept to the barn's splintered door, the wood groaning under her touch. Inside, the dark was a living thing, broken only by a lantern's flicker in the back. 2 of Earl's thugs lounging on hay bales, their rifles propped like toys. Jamal slumped between them, gagged, his temple crusted with dried blood. Nia's breath caught, rage and relief colliding as she saw his chest rise, alive but battered, his brown eyes wide with fear. She nodded to the Marines, her signal sharp, and they moved like wolves, silent, swift, lethal. The first thug didn't see the fist coming, a crack to his jaw dropping him cold. The second fumbling his rifle before a boot to his chest sent him sprawling, a choked grunt echoing off the rafters. Nia rushed in, her knife slicing Jamal's gag, her hands trembling as she freed his wrists, his voice a rasp. "Nia, you came." She pulled him close, his blood smearing her jacket, her tears hot as she whispered, "Always." The Marines secured the thugs, zip ties snapping tight, and Nia stood, Jamal leaning on her, his legs shaky but holding. She'd done it. Snatched him from Victor's claws, turned Earl's trap into triumph, her brother's heartbeat a lifeline against her shoulder. The barn door creaked as they slipped out, the night swallowing them, the Marines flanking, her mind racing. Get to Portland. Expose Victor, end this war. She'd built Horizon from nothing, defied every racist suit, and now she defied them again. Her victory a raw, tear-streaked embrace under a cold sky. They reached the SUV hidden a quarter-mile off, Jamal collapsing into the back seat, Nia beside him, the Marines piling in, the engine roaring to life as they peeled out, gravel spitting under the tires. She thought she'd won, thought she'd turned the tide, her brother safe, her fight renewed. Then the news broke, a buzz on her burner, Apex Air buys Horizon planes at fire sale, and her world shattered. She yanked the phone, her voice a suck, snarl. What the hell? Claire's text followed, frantic. Bored Mole sold the grounded fleet to Victor. FAA deal. We're gutted. Nia's breath stopped, her eyes darting to Jamal, his face pale, then back to the screen. The headline, a gut punch, Horizon wings crippled, Apex snags fleet for pennies. Victor hadn't just taken Jamal. He'd played her, distracted her with a rescue while he sank his teeth into her empire. The grounded planes, her lifeblood, sold off by a traitor inside. Her mind raced. Evelyn, Marcus. But the betrayal's sting was a blade twisting deeper, her victory ash in her mouth. The SUV jolted as headlights flared behind, a truck roaring up, Earl's scarred face grinning through the windshield, his deputies spilling out with guns drawn, a Molotov cocktail arcing through the air. It smashed against the barn, flames exploding, a beacon lighting their escape as bullets pinged the SUV's tail, the Marines returning fire, glass shattering. Nia shoved Jamal down, her scream raw. Drive! The driver floored it, tires screaming, Earl's laugh a howl in the dark as he vanished into the blaze, bloodied but alive, his ambush a parting shot. They hit Portland by dawn, Jamal safe in a safe house, but Nia's phone buzzed again. Dallas mansion torched, arson confirmed. She pulled the feed, her home a skeleton of charred beams, Earl's signature scrawled in the ashes, a message Claire relayed. He said, "Payback's a bitch." Nia sank against the wall, her jacket smeared with Jamal's blood, her empire gutted, her home gone, the rescue a fleeting high before the abyss swallowed her whole. She'd beaten Greg, cleared the charges, thought saving Jamal was the win. But Victor had checkmated her, his mole selling her planes, Earl torching her life, the dual blows dwarfing every fight before. Her mind spun, 6 years building Horizon, defying every doubter, a black woman who'd outsmarted the old guard, and now she was homeless. Her fleet slashed, her brother trembling beside her. The safe house was a drab box, peeling paint and a single bulb, Jamal's breath shallow as he gripped her hand. "I'm sorry, Nia." She shook her head, her voice a rasp. "Not your fault." But the fault was hers. She trusted the board, underestimated Victor, let Earl slip away. The grounding cost millions, the fire took her roots, and the mole's knife cut deepest. A betrayal she hadn't seen coming. She'd faced bankruptcy, bias, arrests, and come out swinging. Her parents grit her armor. But this was a war on every front, corporate, personal, primal, and she'd lost more in one night than in 6 years. Claire burst in, laptop open. Victor's gloating on X. "Horizon's done. But I've got names, Nia. Board's leaking." Nia stood, her jacket slipping, her eyes burning as she stared at Jamal, then the screen, the fire's glow a memory searing her mind. She'd saved him, held him, thought she'd turned it around, but Victor had gutted her empire while Earl burned her past, and the mole's shadow loomed, a ghost she couldn't name. Her resolve hardened, her voice a growl. "Find the mole. Get me Victor's dirt. They think I'm down, I'm not." She'd climbed too high, shone too bright, and they wanted her broken. But Nia Carter didn't break. She fought, and they'd pay. The planes were gone, her home ash, Jamal's blood on her hands. But she'd built this from nothing once, and she'd do it again, brick by bloody brick. The safe house walls closed in, the bulb flickering, and Nia paced, her mind a blade sharpening, for the next strike. They'd thought they'd won, thought they'd crushed her, but she was still standing, still breathing, and the war wasn't over. Nia Carter crouched in a Portland safe house, the peeling walls a cage around her, her black jacket smeared with Jamal's blood, her sharp brown eyes hollowed by exhaustion, as she stared at the burner phone trembling in her hand. 2 days had passed since the barn rescue, since Victor Lang's mole sold Horizon's grounded fleet to Apex Air, since Earl Tatum torched her Dallas mansion, leaving her homeless, her empire gutted, her brother safe but broken beside her. The feds had labeled her a fugitive, Earl's fake shootout report pinning her as the aggressor, a warrant out after his goons fired on her SUV. She'd gone underground, Claire's network hiding her in this drab box, a single bulb flickering. Overhead, Jamal's shallow breaths a lifeline in the silence. Her planes were gone, her home ash, her board fractured. But she wasn't done. 6 years of grit, of building Horizon from nothing. A black woman defying every racist suit. Fueled her now. Claire had a lead, Victor's emails hacked by a whistleblower, proof of his FAA bribes, his orders to ground her fleet, his deal with the mole. Nia seized it, her voice a rasp as she told Claire, "Get me a press link, I'm ending this." She'd lost everything, but she'd take Victor down with her, burn his empire to match her own. The whistleblower, a jittery Apex IT guy named Ryan, met her in a dingy basement, his laptop glowing with files. Victor to regulators. Push the violations, kill Horizon, Victor to Earl, make her bleed. Nia's fingers flew, uploading it all to a secure drive, her mind a blade sharpening as Ryan stammered, "He'll kill me for this." She gripped his shoulder, her eyes fierce. He won't get the chance. Claire set the press conference, a live stream from a borrowed studio, Nia in a borrowed suit, her curls wild, her voice steady as she faced the camera, the world watching. "Victor Lang bribed the FAA to ground Horizon Wings," she said, her words a thunderclap. "He framed me, kidnapped my brother, burned my home. Here's the proof." The screen flared. Emails, bank records, timestamps, irrefutable, a noose around Victor's neck. X exploded. Victor exposed trending, stocks flipping, Horizon up 5, Apex down 10, as regulators scrambled, the FAA reversing the grounding within hours, planes rolling back to the tarmac. Nia stood tall, her breath ragged, the studio's hum of victory roar as Claire whispered, "You did it." Victor's arrest came mid-flight, his private jet forced down in Denver, cuffs snapping on his wrists as cameras caught his snarl. "She's lying." Nia watched the feed, her chest loosening, Jamal beside her, his hand squeezing hers. "You got him, sis." She'd beaten the bastard, turned his coup to dust, reclaimed her planes, thought she'd won the war. Back at Horizon HQ in Dallas, the board welcomed her, Evelyn's stern face softening. "You're still CEO, Nia. We're behind you." Employees cheered, a sea of fists raised, her empire limping but alive, the stock climbing, the feds dropping the warrant as Claire's evidence cleared her name. She sank into her chair, the skyline a golden promise beyond the glass, her torn jacket draped like a trophy. She'd built this from nothing, defied every doubter, and now she defied Victor, Earl, Greg, the system itself, a black woman standing when they'd wanted her broken. 6 years of grit had led to this, a throne reclaimed, a fight won, a legacy intact. But the counterstrike came like a freight train, shattering the calm as she savored it. Her phone buzzed, a news alert, Horizon HQ under attack, and she bolted to the window, the night erupting in orange as Molotov cocktails arced from the street, glass exploding inward, flames licking the lobby below. A mob roared, 50 strong, Earl Tatum at the helm, his scarred face twisted in a grin, a bullhorn in hand, his voice a bellow. "You'll never belong here, Carter. Burn it down." Nia's breath stopped, her office trembling as smoke billowed, staff screaming, security scrambling. She grabbed Jamal, shoving him toward the stairwell. "Go!" But the fire spread fast, walls cracking, the heat a wall slamming her back. She'd beaten Victor, cleared her name, thought she'd turned the tide, but Earl was the wild card, his hate a Molotov in human form, striking when she'd let her guard down. The mob chanted, "Outsider, fraud." Bottles shattering, the blaze swallowing desks, files, dreams. Her empire's heart torched as she'd torched his pride years ago. She rallied her team, barking orders, "Barricade the doors, get out the back." Her voice cut through the chaos, staff piling chairs, desks, anything against the entrance, the fire alarms shrieking, sprinklers spitting useless streams. Jamal tugged her arm. "Nia, we gotta move!" But she stood firm, her eyes on the flames, her mind replaying Earl's rural jail taunt. Big shot CEO don't mean squat here. He'd lost the frame-up, lost Victor's backing, but he'd hit her where it hurt most. A final stand to prove she'd never win his world. The mob pressed, windows smashing, the heat searing her skin as she live-streamed from her phone, her face lit by firelight, her voice raw. This is what we fight every day. Hate that won't quit, cowards who'd rather burn than build. Horizons. Mine, and we won't break. The feed cut as smoke choked her. Jamal dragging her down the stairs, the Marines from the barn bursting in, guns drawn, shoving staff to safety through a rear exit. Nia stumbled out, the night air a cold slap, the HQ a roaring inferno behind her, her empire's shell crumbling as sirens wailed in the distance. She'd beaten Victor, reclaimed her planes, thought she'd won. But Earl's mob had turned her victory to ash, a physical blow dwarfing the corporate war. Her jacket hung in tatters, Jamal coughing beside her, staff huddled in the lot, their faces streaked with soot and shock. She'd built Horizon from nothing, a black woman who'd outsmarted every enemy. Her parents grit her spine, and now it burned, her throne a pyre. Earl's laugh a ghost in the flames. She'd faced bankruptcy, arrests, betrayal, and come out swinging. But this was primal. Hate in its rawest form. A mob tearing down what she'd bled to raise. Claire ran up, her laptop singed. Feds are coming. Victor's locked, but Earl's loose. Nia nodded, her voice a rasp. He's not done, neither am I. The fire roared, a beast eating her past, but her resolve hardened, her eyes on the blaze as it swallowed 6 years of dreams. She'd saved Jamal, gutted Victor, thought. She'd turned it around, but Earl had struck the heart, a blow she couldn't dodge. The mob scattered as lights flashed, cops closing in. But Earl vanished, his scar a promise of more, her HQ a casualty in a war she hadn't finished. She stood, her boots crunching glass, her mind a storm, rebuild, expose, fight. They'd thought they'd won, thought they'd broken her. But Nia Carter didn't break. She rose and they'd pay in ways they couldn't imagine. Nia Carter stood in the smoldering wreckage of Horizon Wing's Dallas headquarters, the night air thick with ash and the sting of gasoline. Her black jacket hanging in tatters, her sharp brown eyes reflecting the flames that devoured 6 years of her life. Earl Tatum's mob had struck hours ago, Molotov cocktails turning the lobby into a furnace, glass shattering like gunfire as his voice bellowed, "You'll never belong here." Her staff huddled in the parking lot, faces streaked with soot, Jamal beside her, his blood-crusted temple a silent scream of the war they'd survived. The fire roared, a beast eating her empire's heart, sprinklers hissing uselessly as sirens wailed closer, red and blue lights cutting the dark. She'd beaten Victor Lang, exposed his bribes, watched him cuffed mid-flight, reclaimed her planes, thought she'd turned the tide, but Earl's hate had torched it all, a final blow she couldn't dodge. Her boots crunched glass, her breath a rasp as she rallied her team, her voice raw. "Barricade what's left. We hold this ground." Staff scrambled, piling charred desks and twisted metal against the shattered doors. The Marines from the barn rescue forming a line, their guns steady as the mob lingered at the street's edge, Earl's scarred face a ghost in the smoke. She grabbed her phone, live streaming to the world, her face lit by firelight, her curls wild. This is what we fight every day, hate that burns us down when we rise. Horizon's mine, and we won't break. The feed cut as smoke choked her, Jamal yanking her back. "Nia, we can't stay." But she stood firm, her eyes on the blaze, her mind a storm of defiance. She'd built this from nothing, a black woman who'd defied every racist suit. Her parents grit her spine, and she'd be damned if Earl's fire ended her. The mob surged, bottles arcing, but sirens screamed louder, cop cars roaring in, scattering them like rats. Shots rang out, a sharp crack splitting the night, and Earl staggered, his bullhorn clattering as he fell, blood blooming on his chest, his brown eyes wide with shock. A deputy, a black officer, young, his face a mask of fury, lowered his gun, his voice a growl. "Enough of your shit, Tatum." Nia froze, her breath catching as Earl hit the pavement, his scar stark against paling skin, his mob dissolving into the dark. The flames roared on, but the threat died with him, a sudden silence blanketing the chaos as cops swarmed, fire trucks rolling up, hoses blasting. She'd won, survived the siege, Earl's hate snuffed out by one of his own, a twist she hadn't seen coming. Her chest heaved, relief flooding her, Jamal gripping her arm. "It's over, Nia." She nodded, her voice a whisper. "Yeah." But the victory tasted bitter, the HQ a skeleton, her empire limping. She'd beaten Victor, outlasted Earl, thought she'd turned it around, held her ground against the fire. But the real blow was, still coiled, waiting to strike. Jamal sank beside her, his breath shallow, his eyes darting, and she turned, her hand on his shoulder. "You're safe now." He flinched, his voice breaking. "Nia, I need to tell you something." Her gut twisted, a chill racing up her spine as he pulled away, his face crumpling, tears cutting through the soot. "I sold the planes," he said, his words a bomb exploding in her skull. "Victor had me, faked a murder charge, said he'd pin it on me. I was the mole." Nia's breath stopped, her world tilting, the fire's roar fading to a dull hum. As Jamal's confession sank in, a blade deeper than Earl's Molotovs, sharper than Victor's bribes. Her brother, her blood, the kids she'd raised after their parents died, who'd cried in her arms in that barn, had gutted her empire while she fought to save him. She staggered back, her boots slipping on ash, her voice a rasp. "You... what?" Jamal sobbed, his hands clawing his hair. "He had evidence, fake but enough. Said he'd lock me up forever if I didn't. I gave him the board codes, let Apex buy the fleet. I didn't know he'd take me too." Nia's mind reeled, the pieces slamming together. Victor's precision, the sales speed, Jamal's panic call, a trap within a trap. She'd rescued him, held him, thought she'd won. But he'd been the knife in her back, the mole Claire couldn't find, the betrayal that dwarfed Greg's leaks, Earl's fire, every blow before. Her empire burned, her planes lost, her home, ash, and now her brother, her heart, was the architect of half the ruin. She sank to her knees, the pavement cold, her jacket slipping as Jamal reached for her. "Nia, I'm sorry." She pulled back, her eyes burning, her voice a shattered whisper. "You sold me out. For what?" He had no answer, his sobs a keening wail as cops closed in, their shouts a distant hum, the fire's heat a fading sting against her skin. She'd built Horizon from nothing, defied every doubter, a black woman who'd climbed over bias and hate, her parents' sacrifices her fuel, and now it lay in ruins, her brother's hand on the torch. She'd beaten Victor, outlasted Earl, thought she'd held the line, but this broke her where they couldn't, a wound too deep to cauterize. Minutes stretched, the night blurring, and then she stood, her legs trembling, her eyes locking. On Jamal's, his face a mirror of her own 6 years ago, scared, lost, fighting. She'd faced worse, rebuilt from less, and as the flames died, the cops circling, she grabbed his hand, her voice steady. "I forgive you, but we're done here." She turned to Evelyn, emerging from the crowd, her stern face softened. "Take it," Nia said. "I'm out. Give it to Rosa. She's earned it." Rosa, the Latina VP who'd fought beside her, stepped up, her eyes wide. "Nia, you sure?" Nia nodded, her throat tight. "Yeah, I'm done running this. It's yours." She walked away, Jamal trailing, the HQ a smoldering grave behind her, her resignation a thunderclap no one saw coming. She'd beaten the system, exposed Victor, survived Earl, but Jamal's betrayal flipped the script, a sacrifice she couldn't carry. The stock would climb, Rosa would rebuild, but Nia was finished, her empire a price paid for a bigger war. She'd built Horizon from nothing, a black woman who defied the world, and now she'd walk away, her parents' grit still in her bones, her fight shifting, to the streets, to the roots, to dismantle the hate that burned her down. Claire ran up breathless. "Nia, you can't quit." But Nia shook her head, her voice a growl. I'm not quitting. I'm starting over. The skyline glowed, a promise beyond the ash, and she moved into the night, Jamal beside her, his hand. In hers, a broken bond she'd mend elsewhere. She'd faced bankruptcy, arrests, mobs, and come out swinging. But this twist, her brother's knife, her resignation, redefined her. A reversal that shook the earth. Horizon would rise under Rosa, but Nia's war was bigger now. A vow to tear down the Earls, the victors, the systems brick by brick from the ground up. Her jacket fell, her boots steady, her eyes on the horizon. Not the airline, but the fight ahead, a legacy forged in fire she'd wield alone. They'd won, thought they'd broken her, but Nia Carter didn't break. She rose and the world would feel it. Nia Carter's journey in this gripping tale unveils raw truths about resilience, betrayal, and the cost of fighting systemic injustice. The first lesson is unyielding determination. Nia built Horizon Wings from ashes, faced racism head-on, and refused to crumble under arrests, corporate sabotage, and physical attacks. Her grit shows that standing tall against hate, even when it's personal, is a power worth wielding. Yet the story also teaches the sting of misplaced trust. Jamal's betrayal as the mole who sold her fleet cuts deeper than Earl's Molotovs or Victor's bribes, revealing that enemies can hide in the ones we love most. It's a brutal reminder to guard your circle as fiercely as your dreams. Another lesson lies in sacrifice. Nia's resignation to Rosa wasn't defeat, but a strategic retreat, trading her empire to fight a broader war against prejudice from the streets up. Sometimes letting go is the ultimate victory. Finally, the tale underscores that justice is a marathon, not a sprint. Earl's death and Victor's arrest didn't erase the scars. They marked a pivot to a bigger battle. Nia's story isn't just about surviving racism. It's about rewriting the rules when the game's rigged. So, what's the takeaway? Fight like hell, trust wisely, sacrifice smartly, and never stop running toward what's right, even when the finish line shifts. Now, I'd love to hear from you. How far would you go to protect what you've built against those who'd burn it down? Drop a comment with your thoughts, hit that like button if Nia's fire lit something in you, and subscribe for more tales of defiance. Share this with someone who needs to see what real strength looks like. Thanks for joining this wild. Here's to rising from every flame, stronger every time.